Hello everyone, welcome to Lao Zhangxi's World. There are two well-known opening policies in China's history. One is America's China policy open door. The other is China's reform and opening. America's open door policy was put forward by State Secretary Zhang He in September 1899, with the scenario that after China's defeat in the First Sino-Japanese War and in jeopardy of partition by the powers, the British occupied Weihai Wei and tried to enlarge its spheres of influence at the Yangtze River. France took the Bay of Guangzhou with control of Guangdong, Guangxi, and Yunnan. Germany garrisoned in Jiaozhou Bay and with Qingdao as its naval base. The Russians rented Liushun Harbor, also named Port Arthur, and intended to hold all China's Manchuria. Japan put Fujian under its influence and also greedy for China's northeast area, which clashed with Russia's interests and ignited the Russo-Japanese War in 1904 and 1905. Then what the United States of America was busy in? The Spanish-American War. And America replaced Spain in the Pacific Ocean in taking over Samoa, Guam, and the Philippines, with its influences to the western rim of the Pacific. Yet, it missed the opportunity in China, not being strong enough to challenge so many rivals at the same time, so just waited for its day. One American Navy officer came and surveyed the harbor Sanzhuao in Fujian. That's a rare deep water port. If America could hold this place as a naval base, then the Western Pacific was in its control and the Pacific Ocean would be its lake. Yet Britain, Germany, and Italy all argued for this place and finally resulted in then. America had a huge business interest in China, and it couldn't tolerate its own interests hurt. So a new policy to China was needed for its proper share of market. American State Secretary was Zhang He, who was born in 1838 in a country doctor family in Indiana. During college, he majored in literature and law. In 1860, when he was 20, he helped Abraham Lincoln win the presidential election and then moved to Washington as president's private secretary. In 1879, he served as Assistant Secretary of State and in 1898 served as State Secretary. Next year, in 1899, he appointed William Lockheed as Assistant in Forest Affairs. Lockheed's Chinese name was Rou Ke-yi, a true China hand. In 1854, he was born in Philadelphia, and since April 1884, he served as the second secretary in U.S. legation in Beijing, and visited China's Mongolia and Tibet, and returned to State Department in 1893. In 1899, Alfred Hepsley, British, as China's Maritime Customs Commissioner, and had a vacation in America and met with Lockheed. On China issue, they both agreed that in all the spheres of influence in China, no business discrimination, no interference to China's customs tariffs, no exemptions to harbor dues and railroad charges, and with open door policy and equal opportunity to all powers, and to guarantee that America's business there. Zhang He urged all other countries with this draft and requesting to maintain China's integrity. Britain, France, Germany, and Japan didn't make any public objections, and only Russia with its own reservation. So in the future, the Russo-Japanese War, America and Britain both stood with Japan, believing Russia's too greedy in China's Manchuria and refrained to America's open door policy. America's policy to China was based on historical reason, and for its GDP at that time then surpassed that of Britain, France, and Germany. With its increased military power and on the world stage, America should have its own voice. In Asia, it changed its policy following the British and focused more on its own interests. This policy requested all the powers have equal opportunity in open China and more or less benefited China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, at least in form. This policy almost lasted for 30 years since it came into being. In 1907, Russia and Japan signed an agreement of mutual understanding, recognizing their own privileges, and American business was gradually dispelled, especially after the incident of September 18 in 1931, that Japan intended to take over whole China and engaged Pacific War with America. Then we turn to the other opening policy and China's reform and opening. In 1970s, China changed to new leaders and turned its strategy from war, revolution to peace and development. In 1979, Sino-US foreign relations established. China witnessed the new era of reforming and opening. Since 1949, and from the former background and poor rural country, new China gradually developed its own complete and industrial system with the inspiration of self-reliance and the endeavors of the people. Great changes that had taken place in China. Yet due to the political strife and the class struggle and the 10-year Cultural Revolution, and there occurred economy stagnation and severe poverty. In 1978, China's GDP was 365 billion renminbi. It's double that 171.6 billion in 1965. Yet it was only $229 per capita annually, less than $1 each day, and absolutely in poverty. And China's reform first began in the countryside with a new system of liability and output. In cities was a divide of administration to enterprise and duty on possession. A state-owned business changed to be private and to a free market. In China, some special economic zones were opened for foreign investment and joint adventure. Stock market and real estate emerged in China, was totally tremendous overhaul nationwide. In the process of reform and opening, China kept on learning from the West in advanced technology and management and global integration. In the decade from 1979 to 1989, almost 80,000 Chinese overseas students studied abroad. Then that was the period of China was under Western influences mostly. Since June 1st incident in 1989, China afflicted from a foreign trade sanction and began its policy hide the light and bite the time. In 2001, China joined in WTO, speed up its reform and development. From 2001 to 2009, China's export leaped to world number 1 from number 6, and import to number 2 with annual increase. That's a 13.5%. And China's GDP became the second largest in the world in 2010, after surpassing the United States, France, Germany, and Japan. Statistically, within the 20 years from 2000 to 2020, the global wealth increased from 156 trillion US dollars to 514 trillion, within which China's part was from 7 trillion to 120 trillion, almost one-third of the total increase. In the 40 years from 1978 to 2018, China's GDP increased from 365 billion renminbi to 90 trillion, more than 200 times. Then based on the data from World Bank, and from $149.5 billion to 14 trillion US dollars, also 100 times, and reached 60% of America's GDP in 2018. China's rapid development and improvement in economy and military power made America under pressure and challenge. So no wonder Washington might use any means to make China retarded. The world economy and global integration afflicted heavily due to Sino-US trade war in 2018. And the following 3 years of COVID-19, China's foreign trade and reform all encounter new challenges. Even some voices can be heard in China to decouple with America and the world, relying upon its own domestic market. China's great changes in the past 40 years amazed the world, especially China's high-speed train and FG technology. China has succeeded in further accommodations to the needs of the people. Meanwhile, it can be seen the gap of income and other issues like education, employment, and medical and aging. Even some core technologies as the large engines and advanced chips, the further updates and improvement are needed. The first open door policy occurred when China was first to open up. Due to its isolation and backwardness, suffered from humiliation and misfortunes. Yet with the second one, reform and opening, undertaken actively by the policy makers when realizing China's own shortcomings and eager to learn from the West and go beyond, representing the pursuit and spirit of the self-improvement of Chinese people. Whatever global changes happen, learn and move forward is the right way to follow. From comparison, let's retrieve the history and take opportunity and know the world and for a better future. Above is today's program, and thank you for your watching, and see you next time.